Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, Mountie Squad. I am Mountie Carl, and welcome to a Let's Talk. Today we are going to take you back in time to the birth of the next-gen console. The 17-year anniversary of the Dreamcast was only a couple days ago, but due to excessive celebration and looking back with some very close friends, I was not able to post because I was actually celebrating this console with some very close friends of mine. And as some of you know, I started working in the game industry back in July of 1999, and as some of you may not know, I started working at Sega of America in July of 1999 more specifically. And many of you probably wonder how I got that job, and mostly it was due to some very persistent applications. Now this is true even today as it was 7 years ago, but doing a simple search on monster.com for video games yielded the results which happened to have started off my career back then. I found this job through monster.com. Yes, monster.com. It's very common to find people who are posting through monster.com to find jobs, and you can still do it. Just go to monster.com and just type in video game or something like that. You can type in game tester, anything like that, and you'll probably find something that will fit, your area or something like that. So do that, and if you need any help, I'm here to help you. And I'll actually, I think I'll make a tutorial sometime this week about doing that because I know a lot of you really wanted that, and I want to help you guys get there. So I applied, and they asked for a list of games that I played. And well, I took a few hours and wrote down every single Atari, NES, ColecoVision, Super Nintendo, and Genesis game I have ever played, also PlayStation at the time. The list was huge, and they could obviously tell that I was very interested in the job and in gaming, and even more so, making it a career. So I was hired and started working for Sega in the third-party test department. For those of you who don't know what third-party test is, it's basically the final stop before your game goes and gets approved to go on the console, where we basically approve the gold master, we send it out to the factory and get it pressed. We typically have around 7 days to test a game and either approve or deny the game's release. So if you are wondering how long a game company like Microsoft or Sony has a game before it actually gets to that point, it's probably about 7 days. They're probably working on it for about 7 days unless there's too many bugs, and then they send it back and it goes back and forth for a little while until those bugs are fixed. Well, we're basically the last stop, and the very first game that I was assigned to was Ready to Rumble Boxing. In fact, Midway was in fact the first developer to have their games go gold on the Dreamcast platform. This included Ready to Rumble Boxing, NFL Blitz 2000, Hydro Thunder, and Mortal Kombat Gold. Ready to Rumble had one of the best bugs in it for the time that we saw, and that was one of the female boxers wasn't wearing any shorts under her dress, and what looked like a developer trying to sneak in some X-rated character content, but it did not get past us. We had a very thorough testing process, and as a bunch of people in gaming, what you're going to do when you're looking at that stuff is you're looking for anything dirty. So we ended up finding this and sending it back, and they fixed it. They put shorts on the character and said it was just an oversight and that was not a vagina, and so that was what it was. So we moved on. It got gold, and they were the first one to have their games. We gave them a little plaque and everything, and you know how Midway turned out. It's no longer in business anymore. So for the Dreamcast launch, I was responsible for pretty much Ready to Rumble, NFL Blitz 2000, Hydro Thunder, Power Stone, Air Force Delta, Arrow Wings, and Tokyo Extreme Racer, and of course Soul Calibur, which pretty much everybody was on at that point because it had such a short testing window. We basically had 24 hours to test this game, where we worked tirelessly playing this game for one whole day, one full 24 hours to get all of the bugs out, and it was by far the best game I had ever seen on any console up to this point. When I first saw it, it literally blew my mind at how amazing the graphics and the ability to be arcade perfect from what I could tell. It was genre defining, and basically we knew that this was going to sell consoles, and I don't think anyone turned down the 24-hour testing assignment. Pretty much everybody was there for the next 24 hours, and we worked forever on it. Power Stone was also a department favorite, as it was one of the first games where we actually had competitive tournaments in the test department for. We did lots of tournaments for various games, and this was one of those because it was one of those games that was super awesome, and it wasn't something, it was 4 players, and so you could actually get something out of it, and it was really awesome. Just that's all I can say about that game. Now, I know you came here for juicy stories, and we'll get to some of those because this is going to be a few parts long. We're actually going to do several over the next couple of days because the stories aren't, they're not just good stories. They're awesome stories, and I am sure that they are in part stories that shouldn't be shared because of the nature, but some of them are truly fun stories. Now, I can honestly say that Peter Moore was a visionary. He was the head of Sega at the time. He was the CEO. And from working at Sega and knowing his vision for the future, the Xbox is truly where the Dreamcast would be at if it had survived. I kid you not. I remember during one of the company meetings, Peter Moore talking about the future of Dreamcast being an all-in-one set-top box that would be enjoyed by the whole family. I don't know if anybody else remembers it like I do, but that was the vision of where the Dreamcast was headed. I mean, we were testing out DSL adapters for the Dreamcast near the end, so you could play Unreal Tournament online, and we actually played with guys over in Germany and Sweden. You know, there were, wherever the studio was, I can't remember where it was when we were playing them, but it was somewhere over in Europe, and it was smooth. The frame rate was really good. I think we were playing on like 1 megabit connections. It was super fast for the time, and it was awesome. Now, during this time, I was still pretty new, and it was probably 4 weeks in. We hadn't had all the company meetings yet, so I had no clue who anyone was in the executive team or what anybody really looked like, because online was still fairly new back in 1999. It wasn't fully operational where everybody and their mom had access to it. So I'm in the elevator and I see someone coming for it. I'm just getting to work and I see someone coming for the door, and I hold the door open, and a gentleman wearing a black Sega Sports t-shirt walks in, and we ride all the way up. We're on the very bottom floor, and if you know where Sega used to be, it used to be like 850 Townsend, somewhere around there. It's where the Zynga building is right now. And I held the door for him, and he comes in. He's wearing the black Sega Sports t-shirt, and we just kind of, good morning, and we exchanged pleasantries at the time. And since I was just getting to know everyone and I was trying to be very friendly and figure out who was who in the company, I politely asked the question, "So, do you work in the Sega Sports division?" And he looks at me like with this funny thing on his face, like, "No." And he says no. He's like, "I run the company. I'm the CEO." And I'm like, and the door is open at this point, and he promptly walks out of the elevator, giving me a nod and some cheers. "Have a good day." He literally said, "Cheers, have a good day." And I'm like, and I stood there for a moment, and I just walked to my cubicle. My boss came by, as he usually did in the morning, to talk to me about different stuff, and I told him what had happened. And he laughed, and he told me that Peter Moore was a super cool guy, and that I was probably going to lose my job for not recognizing him because he loved being recognized. And then he told me that I should find a picture of him online and make it my desktop for the next few weeks as a reminder to who he was, and if he ever came around, he would see his face on my desktop. And sure enough, I did that. And I even mentioned this to Peter on his Twitter the other day as well. I don't know if he remembers the conversation, but he did give my tweet a like. But it was something that will always stick with me, since it was such a hilarious moment in getting into Sega. And this was one of my first dealings with Peter, and my last dealing with Peter is when they were giving us our layoff notifications, and he was still super cool at the very end. And Peter Moore is one of those people that you can just get behind, and everybody at the company loves him, and he's just a all-around great guy. I have nothing but praise for him. And there was if we were still, I would still be at Sega to this day had things not gone badly. And I don't even think they went badly. I think it was just it was Sega Dreamcast was ahead of its time, and the PlayStation 2 came out. There wasn't enough support from EA and stuff like that. And I know a lot of people blame EA as well for the downfall of the Dreamcast because they didn't support it, and that could very well be true. But Dreamcast had a lot of really great games on it, and I honestly say NFL 2K was probably one of the best football games ever made at that point. And part of what I would say EA didn't want to do was compete with something that was basically a better product and have a worse launch. So I think honestly, and I don't know because I was a tester back then, so that could be totally baseless and wrong. Now, over the course of the next few videos, I'm going to tell you, some very fascinating stories that are way better than this one, at least in terms of dramatic retellings go. Stories like you would expect to hear in a frat house, but this was a Sega third-party test, and these were some of the best people that I've worked with ever in my career. People pulling, there are stories about people pulling out their junk, people sending pictures of their junk, people getting fired for various reasons, which some of them were awesome, some of them not so much. Stories about sexual harassment revenge, the time I saved the admin assistant from the homeless guy attacking us on the subway, my first encounter with the term lemon party, and much more along these lines. There are stories from these days that are so unbelievable that nobody would ever believe them unless I told them to to you, and I'll change the names of most of the people because some of them, and I'll see if I can invite some of them to come on and chat with me about this, because I'm in contact with almost every one of them. Some of them not, they kind of fade away and they drift away, but with, the advent, like after we left, like we all stayed in contact with each other, and it was great because we all emailed each other constantly and talked about the same stuff that we did. It was basically like we never left, but we all had different jobs. So some of them are now higher up in many organizations like Microsoft, EA, various other companies, but I still keep in touch with a lot of them, and I may have to censor myself a bit to protect them and their dignity, at least, because they don't want this stuff getting out. And there's a couple guys that were really over the top, and they would probably laugh if they knew I was making this video, but they don't know that I'm making it, so that's quite all right. So let me go ahead and I'll tell you one more story before we go, as we are, I had a wide variety of testers working with us, and it wasn't common that some of them were just working and going to school. And the school in question that I'm going to tell you about was a professional wrestling school in Hayward, California, and this is where a lot of people from the WWE go and stuff like that. And pro wrestling is the term for anyone who is doing a wrestling job like WWE or something like that. It doesn't have to be in a sense wrestling for, whatever it is that you do. Wrestling in the sense that it's scripted and that you're actually going into a ring and entertaining. That's what professional wrestling means. Amateur wrestling is what you see in the Olympics. Professional wrestling, they're not going to go do amateur wrestling. They're doing the WWE and stuff like that. Anyways, that doesn't matter. Anyway, we hired a bunch of professional wrestlers because they applied, and, so we hired a pro wrestler by the stage name of Vinny Massaro. And Vinny, if you're listening to this, I'm very sorry that I have to tell this story, but it's one of the greatest stories and one of the greatest events that ever happened to me. Go say hi to Vinny on Twitter or whatever. He's super awesome guy. I loved working with him. I was very sorry to see him go, and he was awesome. We also had a guy whose name was Leaf, and Leaf was, he was a judo expert, and Leaf was actually his real name, and he was a judo expert. And there's a lot of pride between professional wrestlers and judo experts, and I don't recall, but I thought he might have had his black belt in judo or something to that effect or whatever it is. But one day I'm sitting in my cubicle testing away, doing work, and it was close to lunch. I think it was probably either right at lunch or right after lunch. But so I don't recall the game that I was in the middle of working on that day, but I hear these two guys arguing, and I hear Vinny and Leaf, and they're on the other side of a pillar that we had in our office. And he could not, in fact, they were arguing about the fact that Vinny told Leaf that he couldn't take him down no matter how much judo he knew. Now, this was something of an attention grabber because challenges like this weren't often backed down from. There was a lot of acceptance into challenges, and normally what you do is you'd be like, I challenge you to this, and they go outside and do it. But for some reason, this was escalating a lot faster than what normally happens. So I get up, and just as I'm peeking around the corner, I see Leaf do this flying judo somersault wrap, and he puts his legs over around Vinny's head and flips him to the ground. It happened so fast, like that. This was amazing. Like it was like something out of MMA. And now this was awesome. Like, and it happened in a split second. And it would have been even awesomer if I had not heard this loud booming voice shouting out from the doorway, what the hell is going on here? And everybody just kind of stood there and watched, and it just so happened the boss, our third-party test boss, had just walked by and seen everything that had happened. He saw the whole thing and immediately ordered both of these guys to go home and cool off for the day, and told everyone to get back to work or they could go home and cool off as well. Well, we came in the next day to a notice that their contracts had been ended and would no longer be working with us. So it was very sad to see somebody go like this because of something that, was just very, very awesome, and it was a spectacle. You don't ever see that happen in a office building where somebody issues a challenge and it's accepted almost immediately, and before you know it, people are fired. And it wasn't actually fired because we all worked for a contract company, but basically what happened is they just end your contract right there. Instead of fulfilling it to the end, your contract's ended and they walk you out, and that's pretty much it. So, all right, so that is my time, and I hope you enjoyed this. I will be reminiscing about my time at Sega in honor of the Dreamcast birthday that happened on 9/9/2016, which was 17 years after the launch, and in third-party test for the remainder of the week. And I'll throw out some tidbits of other news as well while I'm going through it, so you'll want to stick around for that, and I'll try and put it in the title of these videos so you guys know what's news and what's a story. But I have a lot of stories to tell and share about my time at Sega and the third-party test that I think you will find fun and fascinating. Now, this is not the norm for workplaces, just as a disclaimer. This is not the norm for workplaces, just to be clear, when it comes to testing games. We had a unique group of individuals, a lot of diversity, and we had a work environment where we cared about what we did and we cared about each other. And so if you do get a job in game testing, do not do this stuff. This is stuff that, you know, it's not to be done. It's very taboo, and you will get fired for it. So if you liked and enjoyed this video, go ahead and drop a like on it and subscribe for more fun Let's Talks about random things like this, and we'll go ahead and get into the news as well. Until next time, I am Mountie Carl, and we'll see you in another video. Mountie out.